Hello, I'm Keyoka, the Awkward Black Nomad. I'm a writer, I'm a dog mom, and I travel solo. My channel is a place for me to talk about my experiences traveling abroad with my two dogs, and I also bring other Black travelers onto the channel to talk about their experiences bopping around the globe, living abroad. If that sounds like something you are interested in, like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed to the channel. Click the notification button so you are notified whenever I go live because sometimes I don't even know when I'm going to go live. That would require me having a content calendar, which I don't have. Um, what else is there? If there is someone that you think I should be talking to, someone who would love to come on the channel to share their stories, drop down in the comment section. Let me know. I have a very special guest today. Let me bring her up. And remember to unmute her. Hello.
Hi,
Hi, Dr. Maya. How are you?
doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us today. Could you tell the people a little bit about your travel story? Give us a little intro.
Absolutely. I would love to. It starts as a young 16-year-old girl. I had traveled for the first time to Argentina, South America, and I went on a program through my high school that took high schoolers abroad. And it was here where I was like, oh, I don't understand Spanish at all. I'm interested in being able to communicate with my host family in the future. So, this is what really sparked me to studying Spanish. I graduated with my degree in Spanish and International Studies in undergrad. I will go on to get a master's and a doctorate in social work, and then I would continue my love for travel throughout the rest of my life. So now I've been to 45 countries. I've lived in six of those countries, and I would say that I am a proficient Spanish speaker.
We love to see it. You guys, if you have any questions for Dr. Maya during the duration of this interview, please drop down in the comment section. Put a Q in front of your question so I know it's a question. And just filter in. You know, Black folk, we speak when we come into the room, so definitely drop down in the comments and say hello. I see y'all. I think this is my sister, Zigifer. Hi. I think that's my sister. YOLO boho. Why is that difficult to say? Hey girl, hey. Hi, Khadijah. I was talking to Khadijah earlier on somebody else's live. Hi, Black Yaya. This is my auntie. Hi, Christy. Well, her name spelled incorrectly. I'm gonna talk about that later. Hi, Rob. Hey. Hi, guys. Okay, we have a great discussion for you. So filter in, like the video if you have not liked the video. So, where are you originally from?
I am originally from Detroit, Michigan. Yeah.
And not you calling me out. Yeah, hi, that's my sister. Okay, so like 45 countries, that's a long way from Detroit. Do you think that little you could have ever imagined that you would have lived abroad?
No, I had no idea that that was going to be a thing for me. It was just as I started to lean in and try to learn language, I had realized that the best way to learn was immersion. So then
Mm,
I decided whenever I was in school, let me go on one of these study abroad programs.
I love that. I love that. Um, and so I'm guessing the trip to Argentina was the first time you've been abroad. Do
Yeah.
you remember, do you remember your first impressions?
Yeah. So I remember so many things. Number one, I didn't know that, as a Black American, you could be perceived as something else, as from like a different place or having a different ethnicity. My entire life, I had always been perceived as American. But I get to Argentina and people are like, "Are you from Brazil?" And I was just like, why would they think I was from Brazil, right? Like, it
Right.
was the first time ever in my young mind that I realized that there were Black people in other areas, not just in Africa. So I was like, wow, so you could actually be from somewhere else. And that's when I learned about like Afro Latin, combination of being both Latin and Black, that my young mind had no idea was a thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah,
I feel like I knew that there were Afro Latinas, but it's almost like in the US, if you're black, that's it. Like you're always black first, you
yeah,
know? And it wasn't until, like you say, I started traveling where I was like, oh no, like your nationality is more important than your color. So much so that, like, as an American, when you start traveling, you become the American. They don't really factor in your color. It's
yeah,
there's a reputation of America that sets the tone when you walk into a room that your blackness kind of doesn't.
yeah.
So, um, do you when you first started to travel, did you have any sort of kind of fear or an anxiety about it? Especially going alone, even though it was through a program?
Yeah, I actually didn't have fear at all. I remember my whole family being at the airport, mom, dad, brother, and sister, and being really sad to see me go. And I'm like, deuces, I'm out of here. I was so ready to go. I was like ready
I
for an
forget them people.
adventure. Yeah, ready to see life. And so, like you said, even though I was on a travel group, I did go there solo. Like I flew in from obviously from Detroit. I had a connecting flight in Argentina before we kind of got to the specific cities that we would be in. So I did have to fly to Argentina by myself as a solo traveler, only 16 at the time. And then when I was in Argentina, that's when I met up with the rest of the group and we traveled to our individual cities together.
Oh wow. Wow. So, after that experience when you were 16, did that kind of leave that impression on you that you wanted to explore the world?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
it. That was the inception to everything. Like the first time I realized places are speaking a whole nother language that's not just English. Remember, I was also 16 at the time, and it wasn't that I didn't think other places spoke another language. I just had not been used to being in a space where I was not could not speak the language all the time, or there was a language barrier. And after that I was like, I love travel. I want to travel all the time, anytime that I can. That's what sparked it for me. So that was a big change in my life, I would say, like a life-changing experience and what made me want to be the world traveler.
Hmm. So this 45 countries, where did the list come from? When did you start knocking these countries down? What was that process like?
Yeah, great question. So at first it was like inadvertently I had traveled to all these countries because I was just trying to focus on like language immersion. So I had lived in Spain for some time to learn Spanish. I've lived in Colombia for a year. I lived in the Dominican Republic for 6 months, but I was specifically doing all of this so that I could learn language. Then after, I remember interacting with a friend and she was like, they have like this thing called 30 by 30. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, this person that is turning 30 years old wants to go to 30 countries before then. I was like, man, that sounds really cool. Maybe I should do something like that. And so the first thing was I was trying to get to 30 by 30. And I ended up going to 30 countries before I even turned 30. So I was like, why not just keep going? Like we're here already. And that's how I just became like a country counter is what I would call myself. Like just need to see, want to see as much as possible in the world.
Yeah. But it's interesting because you've lived in these other places, and I think when people think about country counting, it's just a weekend here, a week there, like 2 weeks, within the restraints of PTO. But what actually helped you decide to take the leap? Like, okay, I wanna learn Spanish, let me go live in Spain for a year. Or I want
Yeah.
to learn, let me go to Colombia.
Yeah, I would say, like I said about that language piece and knowing that the longer that you stay there, the more likely you are to learn the language. So I lived in Argentina for a month, and I remember at the end, I was like, oh, now I can understand what people are saying. Like it's starting to make sense. And then it was time to go. So I was like, a month is not long enough. So let me try to do longer. So that's how I ended up being in Spain for about 4 months and then the Dominican Republic for 6 months. And then I was like, you know what? I feel like a year will really seal the deal for me and I will be in there. And that's how I lived in Colombia for a whole year.
But what was this like during the same like study abroad program? Did you find different ones to go into, or was it teaching, or was it like what's the because to go from like I mean I bet there's a lot of people watching today who are like I would love to do 4 months in Spain, right? But the visa for Americans is only 3 months. So how did you kind of route your way to these other countries?
Yeah, so I benefited from the university. I went through university programs. So one of the programs I went through was the University of Michigan, where they had study abroad for the students. As you know, when I was in high school, I went through my high school, and there was American Field Study for high schoolers if they're interested in studying abroad, and I went with them. And then when I graduated with my doctorate, I did a postdoc and I was like working for a university in Columbia, and that's how I was able to stay there for a year. So it wasn't the same program. It was like every time I was at a different university, I'm like, where's your study abroad office? Let me be able to do this because you're right.
But I love that you said that because I think a lot of people are under 30 and thinking about how they can travel, and not enough people are thinking that they could use school or educational resources to fund bopping around. We're not
Yeah.
thinking like that. We're not thinking like that.
Yeah. You're
Okay? If
right. You're right.
I don't even know what a postdoc is. Okay?
Oh, okay, so after you get your doctorate, you can take like a year or two to be in a program that's almost like preparing you to become a professor. And so it's like the gap, maybe like a gap year in between graduation and becoming a professor. It allows you to have time to really like work on honing your research interest and writing papers, maybe if you need like more publications before you apply to a job at a university, it gives you that opportunity. And you do that through a particular university. So often where you do your postdoc, then you can be hired as a faculty member after that.
Oh. Oh. I hope y'all taking notes. Do you have any tips for people who might be in an undergraduate program or might be getting their master's looking into studying abroad?
Yeah, I would definitely say look at the study abroad programs that the school has to offer, number one. One of the times after I had graduated from the University of Michigan, they allowed me to go to Costa Rica as a program advisor. So I had went through our study abroad program first, and then after I graduated, just a year after that, they allowed me to come back, and they paid for me to go to Costa Rica working. So a lot of times when you are still connected to whatever that study abroad program is, later you could end up working for them, and that happened to me 2 times. So yeah, I would definitely say check out what study abroad programs they have when you're still in school. And even outside of your university, there are places that will fund you to study abroad.
I love that. Okay. Okay. Um, so you mentioned kind of like your family being supportive, but also like really missing you, coming to see you at the airport. What about when they found out that this was not just like a one-off trip? Oh, Maya's going to Argentina that one time. What when you kept leaving, what was the vibe? Were they like, okay, girl, don't get chopped up?
It's almost like you were a part of the family unit at this time because Today, people see me as the world traveler, but I was like, it was a long road coming. It was a long road. In the beginning, my family is like, oh, this is just a travel bug. This is just what she do for right now. Like, she'll get over it. It's no worries. And then when I just kept going places, they're like, okay, we don't fully understand what's happening here. And I'm like, yeah, this is not just a one and done for me. Like, this is who I am as a person. And it was difficult. It was difficult to explain that to my family. They definitely were confused a lot that I was constantly going places. But as I mentioned to you, I kind of focused on the immersion. The fact that I was with the university, they felt way more comfortable with that. They could like call the university or having my parents go to the orientations with me so they could get all the information, giving them the pamphlet so that they knew what was going on, the emergency contact. And eventually, after so many countries, I think they were like, okay, this is a thing for her. And now they're very supportive. They're very supportive. Yeah.
I love that. Um, and so I didn't tell anybody this on the channel, but this month we are celebrating an extended Black History Month, and we're going to be focusing on countries in the continent, the mother of Africa. So I brought Dr. Maya down to the channel because she has been to 5 countries on the continent, 5 countries in Africa. And I kind of want to talk about that. So, how did you decide which countries you wanted to go to? And how did you get to each country? Was it all like was it a stretch of, I want to go around Africa, or was it kind of like there were different opportunities that you ended up in those places?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, I've been to 5 African countries. They are Morocco, Nigeria, Ghana, Tanzania, and Uganda. And for Morocco, that was the first African country I went to. When I lived in Spain, we took a ferry. You can take a ferry for just 1 hour, very affordable, and be in Morocco, right? Because I was in Seville, which is in the southern part of Spain, and so it's not too far away from Morocco. And I decided to go there because they were like, we got trips to Africa, like this is the closest place if y'all interested. And so a group of us from my university were like, let's go on this trip, whatever. So it was really cool. And then I decided to go to Tanzania and Uganda through a Black travel group. I looked online, I saw the website, and I was like, oh man, I really like this trip. They were doing a trip that was like 2 in 1. And so I was like, I'd be really interested in going there because I'll let y'all know that Morocco sits in the motherland, but people might not always be identifying as African or even looking like
Listen,
us.
listen. So if you aren't a member of Exodus Summit on Facebook group, we had a trip to Morocco. That was my first time going to Morocco. That was my first time being on the continent. And I was like, this is it. Like, okay, I'm going to Africa. Okay. No. Okay. No. Absolutely not. No, doesn't count. It doesn't count. It doesn't count. And you know what? What's that show? What's that show? Rami? There's a show, but I think he's Egyptian. But he said something, and he was like, "We're Africans. Like we all black." And it was like, but that's a very unique perspective, Rami, because
Very unique.
no, and,
No.
and you get
Mm.
stared at. We were in Marrakesh, 100 black women in Marrakesh, prancing through the streets. It was amazing. People were in shock. People everywhere we went, we shut it down. Not even on
As you
purpose.
should.
We shut it down.
As you should. As you should.
But was
Yeah.
it so for Morocco to be the first country in Africa that you go to? Thoughts?
Yeah, I was like, this is not cool. They called me African, which I'm like, I ain't got no problem, right? Afro descendant. But I thought it was strange because I'm like, you're actually from the continent and don't even identify as African. More of like leaning into like Muslim culture. And yeah, that northern Africa sometimes is debatable whether people are identifying or not. So then that's how I ended up wanting to go to Tanzania and Uganda. I was like, take me to the
Where are
central
the
part.
black people? What's the black side of Africa?
Thank
My
you.
sister said
Thank
y'all
you.
y'all was dancing through the streets like the cheetah girls, basically.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. I love that. When you said 100 black women, I said,
Yeah.
whoop,
Yeah, it was
that is
crazy.
a statement.
It
That
was
is
it
a
was
statement if I
phenomenal.
ain't never heard one. Yeah, that's incredible. And then Nigeria and Ghana, I've always wanted to go to, like as Black Americans, I think we talk about those a lot in Africa and the importance and facts of like a lot of us might have heritage specifically from those places. So that's why I wanted to go to those two. And yeah,
Have
I
you
saw a lot.
done the ancestry DNA test to know?
I have. I
Mhm.
have. Yeah, have you?
No, I want to though. It's not, after going to South Africa, I really felt like I would like to know where my people come from. I think it had never it's such a strange experience going to like an African country with black people because
Yeah.
I think we're sort of separated from that as black Americans. Like we don't see ourselves as African. We also don't see ourselves as American, which is that's why I call myself a black American, right? Because it's kind of like we're landless. Um and but to go to the continent to see black people, I've said this before on the channel, to see black people on the billboards, to see commercials where there's only black people, uh to see black people just everywhere in all different, like in suits, in uniforms, in doing everything, having so many different examples is very powerful. And it I did feel a connection, and I did want to know I wanted to know more about that part of my heritage. And what was that experience like for you, going to different countries?
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. I remember taking my mom one time with me, and she's like, I've never seen this many black people in the airport in my life. I
Right.
was
On the
like
plane.
just all black everything, like you said, billboards, even something as small as billboards, just to see black people in billboards all the time is like incredible. Black people all around you. I used to say, like, if you, as you know, I'm from Detroit, if Detroit was a country, this is how it would look, like just black people everywhere is like fantastic. And then things that you would normally feel stigmatized about or uncomfortable with, you don't have to even worry about there, right? Because there's so many people that have that same hair texture as you, or skin tone, or body type. So you don't have to feel like you're sticking out because of that. You look like so many other people around you. It's fantastic. There is no other feeling that is greater than that.
Mm. Were there any culture shocks?
Okay, so there was definitely a culture shock. I would say that when I was specifically in Tanzania, this is another place that kind of leans into like Muslim culture a little bit more. I was specifically in Zanzibar, and there were a lot of people that were dressed in the traditional garb of their religion, and they were still like catcalling us, or yeah, just saying stuff on the street, like we were not dressed like the rest of the women there, right? We were not practicing that religion, and we came in with the shorts and the cut off t-shirt and stuff like that. And so I think that they were not prepared to see women that were, do you know what I'm trying to say
They
right now? Like
they weren't prepared. No,
I'm trying,
it sound like y'all weren't prepared. They were prepared.
we okay,
Y'all.
we we were not prepared for the fact that that could be a thing. And this is actually a question I have like wanted to have with more Black people and specifically women that I haven't had is like, do we think that we should be dressing like the people of the space, or do we have the right to dress how we want to, knowing that the consequences could be being catcalled like that, for example, because people are not dressing that way?
Um, so maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but I do think for your own safety, right? Because it's not just catcalling. It's like what would one courageous person do with? Because if you feel emboldened to catcall, what else do you feel emboldened to do, right? You're actually putting yourself in danger by not adhering to the societal norms of the place that you're traveling to. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
But I also am a feminist, and I think you should be allowed to wear whatever you want. And
Yay.
you are not a, we don't victim blame over here, right? But at the same time, if you're, especially if you're traveling solo, I do think you need to be mindful of the place that you're traveling to and respectful of that country's culture. You know, like if you know it's a very religious place, you have to dress up to go inside the Taj Mahal, right? You got to be fully covered.
Yes.
So like certain experiences come with you having to kind of adhere to the respectability of the place. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I actually I would agree with you. I would agree with you 100% that I feel that you do have to dress and respect the place, because there are some times where they were like, you need to put this hair wrap on, or you need to wear, like, we could not enter certain spaces without dressing a certain way. So I definitely do feel like we should adhere to it, or at least have the information ahead of time so that you can make whatever decision you think is best for you. And I am also a feminist, so hey, and do not believe in policing women's bodies. That's why I was like, I'm on the fence because I think you should wear what you want, but also there are consequences. So at least going into it with the information that this is how the people of the space are dressing, and if I am not dressing that way, this is how people feel emboldened to react to me. And so just the
Yeah.
information is key.
Yeah, and then I mean, and then also when you think about it, like you as a tourist probably have access to certain freedoms that the locals don't. Like I'm thinking of my mom had a friend in Saudi Arabia who I've known like all my life. And when I was traveling, he was like, "Come and visit me. You can stay at my house." And I'm like, "Hold up. Am I gonna have to
Hala hala. Hala hala hala.
am I gonna have to like wear a hijab? Like what's the what is it like on ground?
On ground.
On
What
ground.
is it like
He's like,
on ground?
you'll be safe, you'll be with me, blah blah blah. But then also it's like, but the women there have to dress conservatively, right? And it would be careless of me as an American to just blow in and wear whatever I want to wear and stick out like a sore thumb and maybe even put the people in my group, the people who are locals in my group, in danger just because I want to wear whatever it is. I don't dress, I'm not a hot girl, getting old. But to wear like I wanna be free and wear whatever I want to wear. I'm putting other people at risk. I'm putting myself at risk. It's not worth it. It's just
Yeah.
not worth it. And I think when we talk about being like a global citizen, it comes kind of with the territory, right? Like as you travel more,
Mm,
I think the people who I know who are long-term travelers who have been to a lot of different places, they are very respectful of the culture when they travel to a new place. They're not pushing boundaries. It's usually people who are not well traveled that are more willing to push boundaries, more willing to push their Americanness onto the people in a country.
yeah.
I don't
I
know.
think you said it perfectly. It's like respecting the culture. Maybe that's more of it, what it is, rather than like feeling like we have to conform to what's going on, but it's just respecting the culture, reading the room. kind of like the same way, maybe like a parallel is like when we go on a job interview, we know there are specific things that we're supposed to wear or specific things that we, would be risque to wear at an interview. And so, like, reading the room, you know what you're supposed to wear, or, have an idea of how you're supposed to dress in different spaces. And just in our lives, we're supposed to dress different, but depending on where we are, depending on if we're like doing a presentation or if we're at church, if we're at an interview. So, just in general, we're already doing that out of respect of whatever it is that we're interacting with. And so, we should be respecting countries as well. Yeah, I agree with you.
But do you think part of that is because we're Americans? And I feel like in America, everybody has an opinion. And, it's like Burger King. Like, what's the how you want it, have it your way. And we're used to having things our way. Like, if I complain enough about something, the establishment is going to change it to suit me. Whatever it is. I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't work.
That's
But
a
you
good
can
point.
try. You can try. In the US, if you complain enough, you can try and get whatever you want, like at a restaurant or, at a store. But in other countries, it kind of doesn't work that way. So do you feel like as Americans, because we're so used to the world being, in a sense, accommodating to us, like,
Yeah,
color aside,
yeah.
walking into rooms with like certain entitlements, that we go to foreign countries and we expect that same service in a way?
Absolutely. I have seen this so many times, so many countries, so many times I had to just shake my head because it was obnoxious. Yeah. And it was like embarrassing for me as a collective American to just see what was happening. I mean, just being loud and rambunctious and like demanding. I noticed that's like a very typical way of acting that Americans can be like, why isn't my food coming out fast enough? Why aren't people moving fast? Why is this line so long? Why do I have to wait for this and that? Like, I've noticed that so many times. So embarrassing. And I feel like those people are not what you say respecting the culture. They are not. It's more like entitlement. And I want to like use my power and privileges in these situations, which is like, no, didn't we come here for immersion?
But some people don't like, and it was crazy. It's not just white people. It's also other black people. I done been places with my friends who are black, and I'm like, girl, don't have us out here looking crazy. Okay.
Yeah,
You embarrassing the team.
yeah,
Okay. They said they coming when they coming. Chill out.
yeah.
Have you had moments like that where you've had to check yourself, like, oh, maybe this is me being an American because this is not the way people do things here.
Yeah, I am no like shining star, gold standard. I have definitely had my fair share of mistakes. I think the fact that I can be impatient when it comes to not necessarily like standing in line or, waiting to get something. It's not that, but more of like wishing I could have things quicker than I did. So, for example, my housing situation, when I was in Colombia, I was like in between housing and I was like so upset that I couldn't find housing quick enough. I'm like, why can't we get? But it was like calm and chill. They're like, we will look at the house when we have time. We will, we're going to show you the room when our schedule clears. But I'm like, why can't you just show it to me now? Like, I'm trying to get. So I definitely had to learn to chill and, just go with the flow essentially. Like things come at a different time, and just because you don't have it right now doesn't mean you'll never get it. And I actually ended up getting housing. It took a month and it was really good housing. It was the best housing that I had. But I was so ready to just like have it a week later. How dare they, take all this time with the process. But I've learned to be calm. I've learned to be calm.
Yeah, because I think you have to be like, the pace of the U.S. is not the pace of the rest of the world. and and in some ways that's why we might be, I'm saying this and then I'm gonna take it back, successful in a business sense, like in an economic sense, but in other ways it's the reason why we're all stressed out, right?
Yeah.
Because we're living to a different, we're creating lives that have to be run a certain way, that's built off of
Yeah.
like routine and structure, and it's literally killing us. It's literally killing us. Like, we're everybody's stressed out. And you go abroad and you realize that hey, there's just a different way to do things, and these countries are run pretty well. You get to a
Yeah.
new place, yeah, the bus is going to be late, but you know what's full? The bar, the cafe, everybody chilling outside. Look, when I was in Albania, I remember I was on the bus. The bus driver got out the bus, took a smoke break, got a coffee. We all sitting in the bus. Nobody was saying anything.
Coffee.
Okay, he was
Yeah.
he was it was probably about 20 minutes before he got back in that bus. We was just all sitting there. Okay,
Yeah.
some people got off, but we'll get there when we get there. Okay, you will be
Yeah.
all right. You don't have a choice.
We gonna be all
This is
right.
being taken out of your hands. Life is being taken out of your hands. The restraints are off. You know.
Yeah.
But going back, because we got away. Okay, so
It's okay. Bring
we're
us
talking
back.
about culture shocks. We're talking about culture shocks.
Culture shock,
Um,
yeah.
so the first thing is timing, I guess. Like, everything is run differently. But what are some of the other culture shocks?
Yeah, it's gonna definitely be language. Language is a big piece, like just to not be able to speak with people, specifically when I was in Africa, and I just couldn't speak. A lot of people, depending on where we were, definitely spoke English, but when we would just hear them talking to each other, or talking to a person that doesn't speak English, just always like needing a translator. Sometimes I feel sad about that. I'm like, ugh. Or times that I've like gone to a souvenir shop and they were like, wait 1 second, let me go get another person that can actually talk to you because it's not me. And I value language a lot. So sometimes I'm like, I wish I could connect with the person in their
Mm,
native tongue. But that's too many languages to know,
there's no way.
right?
Listen, you can't catch up. You cannot catch, because the Africans that I know are on their like sixth, seventh language. There's- Listen, I apologize to people. I am so sorry. I am American. All I have is English. But guess what? I have a master's in English, so I can speak it very well. Okay? I can speak it very well. Completely
You right about
useless. Um, but so language is a big thing. But what about, like, have you used any of the translator apps? Was that like
that?
effective finding people who could speak English?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest thing that's has been really effective to me is being on the tours, and then you have a guide that speaks obviously the language, or if you go and visit somebody that you know in space, and they're like a cultural ambassador, and they can take you around. So you had mentioned the person that was like you could come to their place, and they were like gonna show you around. That would be like an example of a cultural ambassador. Like you said, definitely you can use the translator in real time to be able to speak to people. And I will always say, like, just knowing a few words could be really helpful to opening up the conversation. And depending on how long you are there, you will start to pick up things, even if you're not trying. You just hear the
Yeah.
same thing over and over, and you're like, oh my gosh, I know what that means. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Okay, so then let's talk a little bit about the countries that you've been to. A Ford has a question. How, if I could click it, how was Nigeria? Which cities did you visit?
Yeah, so Nigeria was wonderful. I was in Lagos, and we went to a cooking class actually where we learned how to make jollof rice, which I thought was so fascinating and so fun with like a real chef
You know what I'm
that
gonna ask,
had,
right?
what are you gonna ask? Who has the best jollof rice?
Yes. Say it. Say it.
I I can't
Answer.
answer it. No.
Answer
You
on
tell
camera.
me.
I'm gonna
I
cut this up
can't.
and make a short.
You tell me, you tell me. Okay. Okay.
I'm
That's fair.
we're we're American. We honestly we don't know. Okay. We're not in it.
We
We're
don't
not
know yet.
getting in it. We're not getting in
We're
it.
not in
We're not in
it.
it.
We're not in it. We're not in it.
But that's
Um,
phenomenal. That's phenomenal. So cooking
yeah.
class,
A
what was the
cooking class.
vibes?
The vibes were great. We went to a dance class too, and it was just like, oh my gosh, sister, brother. We felt like super connected with them. We're having a great time. Like everybody in the place was dancing. There were people that were drumming. It was a whole vibe.
I love the drum. So I went to, I forget what it's called. When I was in South Africa, I went to this like dinner thing where they put on a performance and they give you drums. So you get to do a drum lesson. I was like, I don't have rhythm, but I feel like this is what I was supposed to be doing with my life. Like it just feels like do I need to start studying music because this is in me.
Yeah,
This is
the
in
drumming
me.
is in you.
The
The
drumming is
drumming
in
is in
me.
you. Yes. And also to A Ford, if you go to YouTube to my channel Fly Like Me PhD, I have a video specifically on the African countries that I traveled to and all the things that I did when I was there, kind of like a play by play. I will be doing a follow up video to that as well, where I go into a little bit more detail about what I did. But Nigeria was phenomenal. I want you to know, like, the way that Nigerians dress, they dress down. I was
I
like, we
can't.
were like, did they come from
Yeah.
a wedding? And they were like, oh no, they just went to church. I was like, that's their church outfit?
Just
Looked like there was a
ridiculous.
wedding
Now no shade. Y'all they don't get the wigs together all the way.
party.
But the clothes, I'm like, how do you have so much money, but you haven't glued your wig down? How do you have so much money, but you can't figure out leave out?
The wig. The wig. The wigs are hard. They're
The
hard.
wigs are hard. But
Clothes.
okay, so like when you were in Nigeria, did you go with a group? Was it like a group trip or
Yes.
it was one that
Yeah,
you
it was a group
organized
trip
or through a organization?
through an organization. So, have you ever been on Black travel groups before?
Mm.
No.
I
Okay,
don't
when you
like
said
to
it was
travel in groups.
when you said it was 100 women, what was that?
Oh, that was Exodus Summit.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay, got it, got
Yeah,
it.
it's only
No
black
worries.
women.
No worries if you don't like to
Okay.
travel group, no problem. Yeah, so there are different like black travel groups out there, but I did do a solo travel when I was in Ghana.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
So, do you
Yeah.
recommend, like, if somebody is visiting Nigeria or Ghana for the first time, do you recommend that they go through another, like, a service or a group and not by themselves, or you think it doesn't make a difference?
Okay, great question. I would say that Ghana, I think you can do on your own. They have compared kind of like the way that you can interact with the people can often be a way that's similar to American culture in some ways. And so it's not as much as a culture shock. And I was there and I felt fully comfortable and fully safe with the situation. The thing that you do need to know about Ghana, though, is that they have a complicated visa process and you have to have a visa no matter how long you're going to be there. So some people, to avoid that complicated process, they do one or two things. Number one, you go with a travel group and they'll take help you with the process so you don't have to do it by yourself. Or number two, you go when you can do a visa on arrival, which is in December. And so that means you don't have to do your visa process ahead of time. You get your documents together, and when you land, then they'll give you a visa.
So that's why everybody goes during December.
Exactly. I had to learn that too. That's it.
Oh,
That's the secret. Visa
interesting.
process super simple in December, but outside of that, it was so arduous. It was so
Ooh.
difficult. Like I did it by myself without a group and I didn't get the visa on arrival. Very complicated.
What was your process like? You didn't use a lawyer. Is it something
Yeah,
that
I
a
did.
person could do by themselves, but it's just
You
arduous?
could do. Yes, you could do it by yourself. One of the biggest problems that I had was like uploading the documents was really complicated. So I went to YouTube and saw somebody do a video of how to upload your documents, and that's how I was able to figure it out. And then another thing is that they are doing away with like return envelopes to like send your passport back to you. And so you have to figure out for the specific consulate office what option you're going to take in order for them to send your documentation back to you. And because I didn't choose the right documentation, they like were holding on to my passport at the consulate office. And so I'm like begging to try to get it back. And finally I figured out how to do the right process that they wanted. So that was the thing that was like the most complicated for me.
Mm. Did you have to A4 to definitely got yourself a new subscriber?
Oh,
Ooh.
thank you,
I
A
put
Ford. I appreciate
I
you.
put a link to Dr. Maya's channel in the comment section. Y'all subscribe to the girl. She has some good commentary. Um, is it like, do you have to go to the consulate in person for an
Okay, that's
appointment?
another thing. That is another thing. So some of them are in person, some are not. I did the consulate office in New York for the Ghana visa, so I didn't have to go in person. I could mail it in. But after I didn't do the process correctly to get my documents back, they were like, "Oh yeah, why don't you just come in person? Like your visa is right here." I'm like, "Girl, I can't. I'm all the way in California." So that is a thing. You can go in person and they'll probably like explain everything to you. It can be a very simple process in person, but if you don't live where the consulate office is, then that's a lot. So you just got to make sure you call them. It's good to call them because then they will tell you exactly what you need to do instead of like trying to do it by yourself.
Mm,
For
okay.
the Ghana, they recommend that you get the visa before you book your ticket.
Okay. That's an expensive ticket to wait on, but okay.
I know, I'm with you. I'm with you. But they're like, in case it doesn't go through or in case you don't get it, we don't want you coming being mad at us because you booked your ticket and what have you. In terms of Nigeria, I got a visa on arrival through the Black Travel Group. And I would recommend if you're going to Nigeria, I would recommend to go through a travel group with you rather than going solo. Because like I told you, like Ghana is like kind of similar to like some of the things we do in the US, so it's like easier to navigate. But Nigeria, I didn't feel like it was the same
Do
way
they have
in terms
Uber?
of yeah. Yeah. So they
You got
did when
Uber?
travel group we had transportation included. And then when I went to Ghana, I actually used their taxi service because I was at a hotel. So I used their taxis.
When you say you mean uh the hotel's taxi service, like the hotel's bus shuttle pickup?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I didn't use like apps like Uber and stuff like that because I could just call down and ask them if they could get me a taxi to take me certain places. And that's why
Oh,
if you're
okay.
traveling, I recommend that you stay at a hotel because they have amenities and things like tours and taxi companies that are safe, so you don't have to figure them out on your own.
Okay. Okay. So, what was the experience like when you went to Ghana?
Yeah, oh Ghana, best mangoes ever, like just hand down, like off the tree, just so fresh, so good. In terms of the fruit, really good fruit. I went to the WEB Du Bois Museum in Ghana, and that's when I
Wow.
learned that your boy died abroad.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Exactly.
Was he buried
Exactly.
there?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I didn't know that either. You gotta look it up. And also on my channel, I have a video where I talk about like prolific leaders and where they traveled abroad. And so I give more information about that and I show the tombstone that I got to see. But
Oh,
pretty much what you need to know is that Du Bois in the US, they had a controversial situation because obviously, he's about the liberation of black people, and what is the US about? We already know. And so they were not like allowing him to like leave as much as he wanted to. They confiscated his passport at one point in his life. And so I think once he got that back and he was like, I'm out, headed to Ghana, had a really deep connection with the president at the time, and end up getting sick there and end up dying there, but they helped him, like they were taking care of him in his last days, and he was actually buried as both an American and a Ghanaian citizen. They gave him citizenship.
wow.
He had been there for a while.
Wow. I mean, just from what I've seen online, isn't Ghana one of the countries that are like, come home,
Yes.
come home?
Yes.
We just handed my
Yes.
citizens out, my brother, my sister here, citizenship. There you go.
You are right about that. And so many of our civil rights leaders were in Ghana because the president was constantly welcoming people back, wanting them to be there. We're talking Malcolm X, we're talking Maya Angelou. You're right. So even during that time, they were very welcoming back to Black folks. And even today, they still are wanting us to come back.
Wow, that's phenomenal. I got to tip a toe over there. I got to dip a toe in over there.
You
Um,
do.
yeah. Have you been to? Did you go to Cape Coast?
I did not go to Cape Coast.
Why? Why do you say it like that?
I
I
did
know
not.
why. I know why. I want you to say why.
No. You've been?
No,
Oh,
no. Because you know what? Because I'm one of those people. I feel like I would go there and like get possessed. I really feel that way. I really feel like like I'm too emotional. First of all, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't
you
imagine
couldn't
going there.
imagine.
I couldn't imagine. I
You
would.
couldn't.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not saying never because you never want to like put that over your life, but I don't know.
You don't
I don't
know.
know.
What
Um,
countries in Africa had you been to?
I've only been to South Africa and
You've been to
Morocco.
South Africa. Okay,
Yeah, I
got
want to
it.
see more. I definitely want to see more, but I travel with my dogs, so they've changed some of the restrictions in the U.S. So we'll see where I go with them next. I have an idea of where I want to go, but I haven't made any plans. Yeah, but I definitely see myself spending more time on the continent just because I just love it. I just loved it. I loved it. South Africa is a place where I feel like I could live, and
Wow.
I want to see if there are other countries where I feel like I could live. I think Kenya might be that place, but I like to go visit and see and spend like an extended amount of time to know like, oh, is this a place for me? Is this a place where I should try to get a visa? But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, so if we rank the countries from easiest to most difficult in terms of like
Oh my
how
God.
you think how you think um a solo traveler would
Mm.
adapt or an American would adapt. Let's do that.
Okay. I would say probably the easiest is going to be Ghana. Then after that, I would say maybe Tanzania.
I'm so
Um,
surprised by Ghana because there's this show coming from America. Have you seen this? It's only
what
like
was
5 episodes. It's only 5 episodes. It's called Coming from America. Look it up. After this interview, look it up. And there's three families on there who moved from the US to Ghana. And when I tell you these people had a time, they had a time.
they had a time?
So, but you're saying it's one of the easiest countries to visit.
Yeah, I felt like it wasn't super complicated in terms of like navigating the space, but I was specifically only in the one area I was in. I was in Accra specifically. So I'm not speaking to the whole of the country, but that's where I was.
Okay.
And I would say probably the hardest, I guess not to like navigate, but just like it could be uncomfortable is Morocco in terms of like not identifying as African, things like that. And then also, I don't know if this was your experience, but like I just saw a lot of men around a lot and didn't see the women as much. And so,
I went during Ramadan, so it was a little different.
okay, okay,
Like the streets were completely empty until like 11 o'clock at night. So it was kind of nice. Like if you're gonna
that
go
was nice.
into the souk to like not have a lot of people. But I was there when it was pretty busy. I would say if you're gonna go to Morocco by yourself, I love your advice about staying in a hotel, having the hotel call taxis for you. Um, Also like figuring out like finding a guide to do things. So like I wouldn't go into the souk by myself. I We went with a guide. It was like an Airbnb experience. I would do that. Navigating to different places, I would go with someone who knows the area, or because it's a little different because I was there in a group and we kind of broke off. So when I did go to the hammam, the spa, I had a girl go with me. But if I was by myself, in hindsight, it was a very dangerous situation. Okay,
Mm,
it felt because we booked this appointment at the hammam, but getting there, it was like deep in the middle of the Medina, and you couldn't get there by taxi. Someone had to take you through, and it's dark and they aren't lit, like it wasn't lit, right? So we're following this guy who could have chopped us up into a million pieces. In hindsight, very dangerous situation. Okay, in hindsight. And then even at the end of our spa treatment, going back, having to find a taxi driver because at that point the guy who dropped us off had left. But like finding a taxi driver, having them haggle and argue about the cost of how much it's going to take for us to get back to the hotel, not understanding the language. So I would say if you're going to go to Morocco, either go with people or have a very curated experience, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree
Um,
100%.
but I think it's interesting that Morocco, you have it labeled as one of the hardest in comparison to the other countries on your list.
Yeah, maybe not like it's difficult to navigate, but just in terms of like if you wanted to connect with people from the diaspora,
Hmm.
then that might necessarily be the first place you go.
Fair, fair. I mean, I think it's good. It's good for what it. I don't want to bash a place, but I
Yeah,
didn't really.
no.
I could never go back to Morocco. I would have liked to see Casablanca. I was in Marrakesh for most of the time, but I could easily never go back to Morocco. I loved the teas. I love argan oil. It's good for like if you want to get some nice souvenir, you can get like rugs and things. Leather. I got this purse that's leather that they made for me. But I don't think I could. I don't think I would go. I don't think I would go back. But you
Yeah.
know what? This is putting something into perspective for me because like in my research, I've heard that like Nigeria was kind of a difficult place to navigate. But I think it just depends on what kind of traveler you are.
Yeah.
But as some if you are not used to traveling solo, if you're like a first time traveler, would could they be able to be on ground in Nigeria by themselves?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna go with whatever you read. I would say going to Nigeria, I would go on a group or a trip of people. I don't think it's as easy to navigate as some other places. They just kind of have a different road system and like ways of getting places, like places that you may not know even exist without having a local who kind of knows that place or that area. So yeah, I would definitely recommend for Nigeria to
Scammers?
go. Oh yeah, oh gosh. There were times that people, it wasn't a pickpocketing situation. Like a lot of times they will ask you, but they would do a favor for us and then they would be like, could you give us money for that? When we thought they were just doing this out of the kindness of their heart. And I like to talk about like the context of the fact that African countries have been exploited so much, resources have been taken away so much, right? Become a stigmatized place that it may cause people to, try to hustle in this way. And that was a part of our experience in Nigeria. And so if that's something that like makes you uncomfortable, it could be better to be with a travel group and then the leader of your group could handle that rather than you having to do it by yourself.
Okay, but you were in Ghana by yourself, and I heard that this is what I heard. I don't know this for a fact, but I heard that a lot of the Ghanaian men um try to propose. Like they go and they, that you'll get catcalled or they'll try to get wife you up real quick, you know?
Yeah, the catcalling is going to be a global issue. I realize no matter where we go on this green earth, that is
Unfortunately,
a
men are all the
piece.
same.
It's just so awful. Goodness. Okay, yes. And then, yeah, people in general, I find outside of the US could be more interested in like locking things down, being with people, wanting to go on these dates, like kind of being like persistent in a way that I think that American men maybe not so much. Yeah, definitely going to be a
Okay.
thing.
Did you dabble in anything while you were on the continent? Did you go on any dates or were you there? We probably weren't even there long enough to date.
Yeah, I wasn't there long enough to dabble. I watched other people dabble, and that was interesting. Kind of what you talked about. People was definitely interested. Numbers was definitely being exchanged. People wanted to follow up with other people. It was definitely a thing. So they were interested. They were interested. Okay. They're not
Okay.
afraid to show how they feel about
Okay.
you.
So like people are like a bit more persistent. They're willing to like approach and ask you out on a date in public. Okay.
They're definitely willing to approach. They had no problem approaching.
Okay. So shoot your shot. Country where you shoot your shot.
Whether you are interested or not, they can approach. You don't have to worry about that.
Was there any place where you felt kind of unwelcomed or unsafe?
I would say maybe there were some places in Nigeria where there were kind of like maybe dark alleyways that I didn't necessarily go down, but I could just see like maybe that wasn't, that isn't a place that we should explore or we should go. We also recognize, and this is also going to be a global issue, is that places when there's a big city, you'll see like a lot more homeless population than in other areas. And so this can also contribute to what we talked about of people trying to hustle you or like asking for money, things like that. I also saw that in Morocco. There were a lot of kids on the street begging for money. Yeah. And those situations make me more so sad than like unsafe.
Mhm. Was there any place where you felt more like particularly welcomed? Like you were like, wow, they really received
Oh,
me here.
wow. Yeah, Uganda, they really received us. They were so kind, so accommodating, really wanted to make sure that we had a good experience, trying to cook to our specific dietary needs, like just a very open, very friendly population.
And this was another one of the group trips, Tanzania and
Yes.
Uganda group trips while you were living in Spain.
No, so this was actually more recent. I lived in Spain when I was in undergrad, and I studied abroad there through my university and got credits for my
Okay.
graduate degree in Spanish. This trip actually was like 3 years ago. It was like 2 or 3 years ago. It was like more recent. As an older person, I decided to do like these adult field trips, which is what I'm
Okay.
calling the travel groups. Yeah.
We live adult field trip. So, what's been your experience? What was your experience like in Uganda?
Yeah, so Uganda, we went gorilla trekking, and that was just
Did
so
you
interesting.
see a
I mean,
gorilla?
yes, we were just steps away from the gorilla,
Really?
right there with the whole family.
The whole family? Like
The
Tarzan?
whole family. Yeah, it was right there, right there. Yeah. It was pretty incredible. It was pretty
That's
incredible.
phenomenal. That's
Yeah, just a few
phenomenal.
feet. Yeah. So, Uganda has a lot of gorilla trekking. If you're interested, you can definitely see them and be as close as you choose. Now, you obviously shouldn't touch them, but they're close enough to touch. But they were like, we need to be quiet and be respectful of them living their lives. So, yeah.
Oh my God. So what other things did you get into in Uganda?
Uganda, I went bungee jumping.
From
Yeah.
where?
Yeah. So I actually bungee jumped into the Nile.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so the Nile was below me and I decided if I'm gonna do a bungee jump, I should just go into some water, right? Because at least I know I can swim, and so if something happens, I think to the best of my ability I'll be okay. And so, yeah, I got dunked into the Nile and it was so intense. You're just like dangling, waiting for the person to pull you up when they're ready, blood rushing to your head. It was just a very
Dangling
intense.
upside down.
Hmm. Yeah. So I got like dunked and then I was just hanging there waiting to be pulled up for a good 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay. Yep.
Yeah,
So
that's how I
so
live my life.
um okay. So what other because I mean it's giving Daredevil. What other things have you
It is
done on the
giving.
content that
It
we're
is
happy you
giving
made it?
Daredevil. Yeah,
Yes,
I
we're
am a
happy you made
Daredevil. Right, you're right. Yeah, we went whitewater rafting in the Nile too. Now I know it's giving Daredevil, but this
it. It
wasn't
is.
me. They actually knocked over the captain. He knocked over our boat, and we all like went into the yeah. It wasn't me. I had my paddle. We did what we needed to do, but he intentionally like hit this rock and knocked us all over.
No. I'm
Yeah,
saying
girl,
no.
no.
I'm
Girl,
saying
no.
no. I can't. My thing is, I can't swim, but I will do that experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done whitewater rafting in Colorado, and I've gone into the water, and I don't know why people think it's a joke. Like, I really can't swim. Like, come get me. Come get me. For real. But you just have to, at that point, you just got to go with God,
You gotta
honestly.
go.
You got
You
to go with
gotta
God.
go.
Okay,
But
so
we had our
whitewater
life
rafting
jackets
in the
on.
Nile. You had life jackets on. Gorilla
We had life
trapping.
jackets.
Gorilla trekking.
Gorilla, gorilla
Okay.
trekking,
Bungee
bungee
jumping.
jump, and ATV. We were on
What's a
an
good
ATV.
ATV? In Morocco or in
Yeah.
Uganda?
In Uganda, and we drove around like different communities, so we got to see like different neighborhoods. Yeah, and like the scenery of Uganda. It was actually really nice.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So have you done any other uh like daredevilish experiences anywhere else in the country? Because I think Tanzania is big to go on like a safari.
Yes. So we went on safari. We saw lots of animals. Yes, yes, yes. Cheetahs, lion, buffalo. Yeah, we were pretty close to that lion too. That was, I guess, another daredevil situation. We were in the car though, for the trek, but we were like maybe 5 feet away.
Okay,
Great
he could
video
get
on
y'all.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
could get y'all. That's close enough.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, it sounds like you've done a lot. Has that experience kind of changed? Because you said you don't. I don't know if you would have described yourself as a daredevil before doing all of these things. Like, is that just something in you? Have you been doing things like this? Have you been risking your life for the past
Oh my God.
20 years, or is that like a new thing?
You know, it might be a new thing. It might be a new thing. You know how like people have a midlife crisis and they're like, let me go out
Is
and
that
buy a
what happened?
Lambo. Like, it might be something like that where I'm just like, we're here. They got an opportunity. When else will we do this? And I just
Okay.
go for it. I don't know, because I don't think, if I'm being honest with you, I don't think I'd be that brave in the US. I'd probably be like, yeah, no. But abroad,
Hmm.
I'm like, let's live it up.
That makes sense to me. That makes sense to me because it's like you said, like when else am I gonna be even around the Nile? when when else is this
Exactly.
gonna happen? So you might as
Let
well go
alone,
in it, like get in the Nile.
you should get in the Nile. It's
Get in the
beautiful.
Nile.
The Nile is beautiful.
Mhm. Is there any other like memorable experience that you think other people should know about that they should try?
Yeah, I would definitely say, depending on where you're going, you should lean into like whatever is signature to the culture. So, like you talked about Tanzania and going on those safaris, like we talk about Uganda and gorilla trekking, um, going to cooking classes, like based off the Jollof, right? You could go to the cooking classes or going to the dance classes. In Morocco, do you remember like on the street they would be selling like all the beans and everything in those like going to like markets like those, like
Yeah,
things, seeing the thing that's like very signature to the place, I think is important just to get the vibe and see how people live their lives, yeah, and what the
yeah, I
place
love
has to
that.
offer.
Yeah, but the funny thing is when I was in Morocco, they got me to buy a tagine, the little because the guy was like, "This is easy for people who can't cook. You just put all the ingredients." I was like,
What you trying to say?
"It's true. It's
No lies
and
detected.
right and." But that's how he got me to buy a tagine because he was just like, "This is you just put the ingredients in there, you put it in the oven, you leave it. You know, that's how
Done.
they make all their meals, and
Yeah.
flavorful, very good. Love
Flavorful.
so flavorful. Where
Yeah.
is the best food in
The
Africa?
best food. Oh, goodness, goodness. Okay, the food in Morocco was good. This is if you like curries and spices.
Yeah.
You know, I like that a lot. So I really enjoyed the food in Morocco. Um,
An
okay.
easier question. What what was your let's do it this way. What was your favorite dish from each country?
Okay.
That way we're not pitting them against each other.
Yeah, yeah. I would say the food in Nigeria was good too. They had like various types of food, pepper soup, as we know, the jollof rice. We had like gone to a buffet where it was just like all different types of food that we just would have never tried before. I felt like Nigeria really had like a rich cuisine to try for sure.
Hmm.
We got to try a lot of new food, different types of food in Tanzania too. Um, yeah. So I would say those had some really good food options. I am probably not the best person to ask the question to because I identify as a vegetarian. So I didn't like always eat the signature thing because a lot of times it had meat in it. But from what I saw, that's what people seem to like.
Did How were people receptive of your dietary restrictions? Because I mean, the Africans that I know in the U.S. would be like, "Girl, if you don't eat around,
Yeah,
like,
you right. Not all places are going to be open to the dietary restrictions. In Uganda, they were very open. They were very accommodating. In Tanzania, I actually found like a vegan restaurant that was like really good when I was in Zanzibar. Nigeria, I would probably say was the most difficult in terms of finding vegetarian options. Yeah, it was like, this is what we have.
Did you
What say
get
you?
sick? Did you get sick? Because no?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not. Yeah.
Because
No.
I've heard that sometimes the food can be like more filling than maybe we're accustomed to. So it's like, and also spicier. Like if you're not used to eating spice, it's like actual spicy food, not like watered down American version spice. Like they use pepper
They use sweet pepper.
for
Yes.
real. And like, so I've heard some people like can't, either they like get sick from all the pepper or they get sick because like the food is just like, it's just more filling than we're used to eating. So it's like you'll eat one thing and you can't, you need some Imodium or something. But you didn't have
Yeah.
that kind of experience. Maybe because you were vegetarian, you were probably more selective.
Yeah, I was more selective. And I feel like too, going on the travel groups, they particularly pick places that are known to, maybe cater to more international palate.
Mm.
So specifically what we did. And we found in Ghana, I just went to restaurants that I saw, but I found that I was okay at the end of the day. I also do like spicy foods, so maybe I
But
was
they
already
had
prepared.
But they had, like, when you were in Ghana, they had options there that were vegetarian or not, that didn't include meat.
They did have options there. Sometimes I had to request them, like it
Okay.
wasn't always on the menu.
Okay. And it wasn't, no, like how were they receptive? How was the staff or the chef receptive of that request?
Yeah, so I actually think one of the things that we learned in the cooking class in Nigeria was the chef had talked about how now more people are requesting vegetarian options, so they're becoming more well versed in that, or like practicing ways to turn things into a vegetarian option more so than they were in the past. So I think people are more receptive to it or more used to people asking for that now. So
Okay.
it wouldn't be a huge shock, but yeah.
Khadijah wants to know, how big are the travel groups?
Okay, so depending on what trip you want to go on, some of them are more popular than others. So when I went to Tanzania, there were 30 of us on that travel group. When I went to Nigeria, there were 11 of us on that group, and when I went to Uganda, there was only 3 of us. So I think depending on like the popularity, like Ghana's a really popular place. So a lot of people want to go on those, and often travel groups are pretty big for Ghana. And I decided not to go on a travel group particular for Ghana, wanted to do it kind of on my own. So yeah, think that countries that are really popular, such as a Tanzania, such as a Ghana, are always going to have a lot of people on them. But places that are not as popular, like a Uganda, will be a lot smaller than those other larger groups.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. I think, and was it one of those situations where they give you a list of like excursions, like things that they, and was it like everyone is doing this on this day, or could you pick and choose which ones you wanted to participate
Great question. So you can always pick and choose what you want to participate in. It depends on the travel group. Some of them are going to have activities that they highly recommend that everybody go on. So, for example, like they wanted us to go on the activity of like dancing. we took the dance class because they were like, this is a part of the culture. This is a great time to like talk and connect with people in the culture. But then something like the cooking class is optional. And
Mm,
so you don't have to go on everything. They will tell you, like, if you don't want to go, you can go on your own and walk around the space. You can take a rest day if you want. And a lot of times you will pay for the specific activities you want to go on with your travel group. It's not included in that ticket price that is for the program, but those will be like additional excursions and you can choose to do them or not.
okay. Okay. What would you say to any African American or Black American who is sort of hesitant about visiting any country in Africa because of like misconceptions? Maybe they're concerned about safety. What would be your advice?
Yeah, what I would say, it is my greatest wish that every Black American could travel outside of the US and specifically to the motherland, just to see people that look like you all around. There is no other experience that compares to that. If you have issues or you're trying to like debate, is it safe? Where should I go? There is always a safe place within Africa to go. All of the places are not the same. As much as they try to like stereotype and have all these negative depictions about the place, it is not true for every single aspect of the place. I've been to 5 countries, felt very comfortable and safe, felt like people really cared about me and were not trying to cause me additional harm. The main thing that you want to do if you're trying to figure out where to go, because there are 54 countries in Africa, is you want to do your research. What is the vibe that you're looking for? Because there's so much diversity. You can get the vibe that you want. You can get a place that is more comfortable to a solo traveler. You can get a place that a whole group will be interested in going to. You can get a place where you can really learn a lot about the history, like going to museums. A lot of places will have the no point of return, like from where enslaved people were taken and were not able to return. That was like the one port where they were taken from. So you can see like historical pieces, you can see cultural pieces with the food and the dancing. You can meet some really great people. I mean, whatever you're looking for, there is something there. If you are interested in like history and seeing places that have been there for a long time, right? Pyramids and things of that nature. It's all there, and there's no reason to be afraid of it. Like just making sure that you do your homework, you understand what's going on in the space at the time that you want to go, you read around, and especially if you could talk to somebody that's been there already, they can give you specific advice about that place. So there is nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything you wish you had known before going into Africa, or is there something that's maybe surprised you to learn?
It surprised me to learn that people on the continent may not identify in that way. Also, not everybody is identifying as Black either. Sometimes people are leaning more into ethnicity than they are leaning into race. You know, like in the US, like race is a big part of our socialization and always thinking about that. But for some people, it's like ethnicity, right? Like I feel Egyptian rather than like focus on what racial category you fit in. So definitely like not projecting that onto other people, allowing them to identify how they want to identify and whatever place makes more sense for you to visit is what I would do. And the biggest thing is like research, 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 because you don't want to end up going so far to a place that you're like, wow, this wasn't what I was expecting, or I wanted to like have a different experience. But like I said, there is a space in Africa for all of us to enjoy based on what we're interested in.
I want to ask a petty question now. So, do you feel like when people come into the US that they should define themselves the way we do? So, there was a lot of conjecture online about Miss Tyler because she did not outwardly identify as Black. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is complicated. So, this is why I say you need to do your research because you should just know ahead of time how the people in the space are identifying. That doesn't necessarily have to change the way that you identify. But if I was Tyler, I would come into the space like, hey, recognize that as Americans, you all identify in XYZ. Just want to let you know from where I am from and what we do, this is the way that we are identifying. And that would translate in the US to being, example, mixed race or something like that, right? Like recognizing her culture, recognizing the culture that she's in, and kind of bridging the gap of information there because this is such a sensitive topic, specifically in the US. And this happened to me in the Dominican Republic. I lived in the Dominican Republic for 6 months. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Black people speaking Spanish. It's about to be a great time. Let's get it. Don't stop. Get it. Get it. And I got there, and some of the Dominicans were very anti Black, and I just never saw that coming. I was like, I thought we were all in this together. But then to learn, like, some of them identify as India, as the motherland, not Africa, I was like, okay, wasn't prepared. So this is why we need to know before we go in what we're working with. It doesn't mean we have to necessarily agree with how people are identifying, but at least understanding where they're coming from. So to Tyler, I would say at least understanding why people would be upset about that, right? Like it's not your fault how they respond, but it is up to you to recognize if you're in a different space, if you're in another country, you have to respect that space. And if people are telling you they're bothered by something, it might be a reason.
Very, very well done. I love that answer. I agree. I agree. Um, where are you headed next?
Oh, yeah. So for my birthday, which is in August, I am
Oh, you're a
headed to
Leo.
Panama. I am a Leo. A Leo. I am a Leo. I am a Leo. I'm headed to Panama and Bolivia.
Love that for you. Why Panama?
Yeah, so Panama is another place that has people that are going to look like us. This was a large area where there were like a lot of enslaved Africans that were in this area. There are a lot of Afro descendants specifically in Panama. And so, always important to be able to see and connect with people that look like us. We don't necessarily have to say identify as us, but look like us to understand the history diasporically of Black people. And then Bolivia, because I, as I've told you, am a Spanish speaker and I would like to see all the Spanish speaking countries in the world.
Okay, I love that for you. Do you think you would ever live abroad?
Yes, so I have lived abroad 5 times and I am planning to move abroad next year for time number 6.
But do you know where already?
Yeah,
Do you
it
want
is
to
probably going to
share?
be in South America, yeah, because of the language. And that's a big piece I will also say while I'm here is that make sure if you're learning a language, this is a place that you want to be, a place you want to live, because that immersion is going to be really helpful in maintaining your language skills. And so I was like, dang, I could have like learned another language when I was younger to have that under my belt to like be able to connect with people more diasporically, but I just have English and Spanish, so
Hmm. So, I mean, you've done so much traveling already. Are there still places where you're still dying to explore?
yeah, I am interested in going to Japan. Maybe that could be a trip for next year. Just like seeing the culture. I've been connected to anime at different points in my life, and I think that Japan is just a beautiful place. I mean, just in terms of the pictures, in terms of the architecture, I would love to see that. I would like to see more countries in Africa for sure. So you mentioned Kenya. I'm interested in Kenya. I'm interested in Ethiopia. I will also be interested in seeing South Africa at some point. I mentioned the places, obviously, in South America. I would like to go to the Caribbean and see more countries in the Caribbean as well. So, yes, there's still places I'm dying to see, even with 45 countries. There's still more to see.
You're still counting.
Still counting.
And lastly, what have you learned about yourself through travel?
Wow. I have learned about myself that I am very, very adaptable. I've learned that. I've gone to places and been like, what are we doing? What are they saying? But was able to adapt in some way. I was like very resourceful. I found out ways to make things work, things that like seemed like I was having a hard time in the beginning. Like I told you, trying to find housing. I started to learn from the locals and people in the space, and that like really improved my way of traveling. So yeah, I would say I learned that I could be very adaptable, very creative, in navigating places. Especially like being a solo traveler. I've solo traveled 5 times, and just the ways I was able to find out things just in the space, I was like, it's pretty incredible. Yeah, using resources. Yeah.
My my co-host Angela. Yay, and now we can follow along on these travels, these travel adventures via YouTube. So I've placed
Absolutely.
Dr. Maya's YouTube channel in the comment section, also in the description of this video. I want to say thank you again for agreeing to appear on my channel. Thank you all for watching. Um, you have a very beautiful, beautiful travel story. Thank you so much for sharing with us. You guys, I think we're wrapping up. We've had a lovely conversation. Thank you all who have engaged in the comment section. Thank you for liking the video. If you are not subscribed, what are we doing? Subscribe. Subscribe to my channel and subscribe to Dr. Maya's channel. Okay? Dr. Maya, I always do this. Dr. Maya's channel. Okay? Yes. Subscribe. Click the notification button so you are notified when I go live. YouTube be playing games with me. Okay? YouTube don't notify the people when I'm live. Okay, and I don't know when I'm gonna go live. So y'all need to know. Y'all need to be notified. Thank you, Dr. Cheryl. Hi. Thank you. But yeah, so this was a beautiful conversation. If you are interested in appearing on the channel and talking about your travel experiences or your live abroad experiences, drop down in the comment section. Let me know. Um, yeah, that's all I got today. Y'all have a beautiful Sunday. Thank you all for joining us. Stay black. Peace out.